This is a short presentation covering 7 key reasons as to how Hitler and the Nazis came to power in 1933. The first reason I'd like to discuss was the impact of the Wall Street crash and the Great Depression on Germany. The Wall Street crash, the stock market crash, happened in the United States, and in October 1929, at the same time, Gustav Stresemann, the leader of the Weimar Republic, died. He was an excellent politician. He'd secured loans from the United States. He passed away at a very bad time for Germany. As a result of the American stock market crashing, one of the first things they did, the Americans, is ask the Germans for their loans back. So that hit the Germans with 2 problems. One was the fact that they would have to raise taxes to be able to pay those loans back. But 2, there was a global recession, meaning that 6 million people were unemployed in Germany by January 1932. Because of this, the Nazis made a series of promises, and the biggest one, or the most hard-hitting one, was this promise of work and bread. People feared that the communists had a very good chance of taking over in Germany, and they saw Hitler as someone who was not afraid to stand up to them. In September 1930, as a result of all of this, the Nazis won 107 seats in the Reichstag. Bear in mind that in the 20s they couldn't even muster 10. Brüning resigned as chancellor in May 1932, which demonstrates the political turmoil that came about as a result of this. At the same time, the Nazis are increasing their use of propaganda. This is false or misleading information used to spread a certain point of view, and it can be in the form of posters, it can be in the form of newspaper articles, it can be in the form of radio broadcasts or speeches, and the Nazis had Joseph Goebbels in charge. He was very skilled at producing propaganda. And by 1930, the Nazis actually owned 120 daily and weekly newspapers, and that clearly demonstrates the ability that they had by 1930 to put across their views to a large proportion of the German population. The third thing is what messages are actually coming out in this propaganda. You can see the image at the bottom here of the World War I leaders, Lloyd George, Clemenceau and Woodrow Wilson of the United States, meeting to thrash out what was then the Treaty of Versailles. The Treaty of Versailles was a treaty produced in 1919. Hitler, along with many Germans, thought that it was humiliating, thought that it had treated Germany unfairly at the end of World War I. The Nazis played on that significantly. Along with that, they blamed the Jews for the economic downturn from 1929 onwards. They blamed the Jews, and they said that Jewish people were akin to communists, were the same as communists, and many Germans believed that. And the Nazis, obviously the biggest thing they did is they promised to create jobs. Very simple message that appealed to those 6 million who were unemployed. More significantly, and perhaps less well known, is the support that was given to the Nazis by famous German industrialists. On the left we have Krupp, and on the right we have Fritz Thyssen. These two gave millions of marks to the Nazi Party to help them in funding their election campaigns. And the big reason for that is they knew that if the communists took control, if they took power, then there was a danger that their businesses could be confiscated. And of course, the Nazis also had support from Hugenberg, who was a newspaper tycoon who allowed Goebbels to publish articles criticizing the Weimar Republic. To go along with all that, Hitler had the support of the SA. They were a paramilitary organization founded in the 1920s, led by Ernest Röhm. Their main job was to intimidate the opposition, to show that the Nazis had popular support. And if you like, they were the bully boys of the party. They intimidated people, but thousands of them marching down the streets. They forced people to acknowledge that the Nazis had a power base. Of course, you can't talk about this without talking about the role of Hitler in everything, and particularly his charisma. You can see from the photograph on the screen right now the hand gestures, the passionate, engagement with his audience. His public speaking ability was second to none. He could appeal to lots of different types of people. He was, if you like, all things to all people. He had that charisma, and that certainly helped the Nazi Party. And finally, I'm not going to really read through this slide, but there was political infighting between 1929 and 1933 that allowed the Nazis or allowed Hitler to become Chancellor of Germany. And it was a combination of politicians such as von Papen, who thought they could control and manipulate Hitler. They persuaded Hindenburg to appoint Hitler Chancellor because they thought that, yes, the Nazis had support, but in a political situation, Hitler could be controlled. He could be manipulated. And they persuaded Hindenburg, they persuaded politicians of the time that it was worth putting Hitler into this position of power to secure and settle the nation, if you like, while allowing them to basically pull the strings in the background. Of course, they were underestimating Hitler. They didn't know who they were dealing with. And that pretty much summarises 7 key reasons how Hitler and the Nazis came to power in 1933.